Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the program where we discuss the noble life and the noble seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are busy discussing the phase where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam preached, and the first phase of his da'wah was limited, private, secretive, covert, and to a limited people. We spoke about the early people who accepted Islam, the 40 odd individuals, and how they had been practicing the religion. What I need to highlight here is, before we get into today's discussion, is when we look at the early entrance of the Muslims in Islam, it wasn't that they were only poor people or from the slave class. Rather, there were many notable and key individuals that accepted Islam. The likes of Abu Bakr, the likes of Uthman ibn Affan, the likes of Abdurrahman ibn Auf, the likes of Ubaidullah, Talha ibn Ubaidullah, the likes of Zubayr ibn al-Awam, the likes of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, the likes of the sister of Umar ibn Khattab, and many other great Sahaba, like the likes of Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, the likes of Ja'far bin Abi Talib, the likes of Asma bint Abi Bakr, and Aisha bint Abi Bakr, Asma bint Unais. These are notable individuals. So it is not to say that only the poor people accepted Islam. And it is not to say that only the people of the lower class entered into Islam. Rather, it was a mixture of all people that accepted Islam. You had the free people, you had the slaves, you had the poor, you had the educated, you had the business class. Everybody formed part of the early batch of Muslims. Now, in today's episode, we are going to discuss how the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam propagated Islam openly. Up to this point, Islam was in private. Now comes the second phase of da'wah. The second phase of da'wah is, now you must invite everybody. Everybody and anybody. Within your borders, outside of your borders. Within Makkah, outside of Makkah. The travelers, the residents, your family, everybody must be invited. And so the revelation came down. What was the revelation? وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, the first one. And فَاسْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرْ, the second one. These two verses denote that now, O Nabi of Allah, you must go open. You must be public about your mission. No longer limited to certain individuals. So when the verse وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ came down and warn your family members, the Prophet ﷺ did a number of things. First, he invited. Now this is a formal invitation that is given. He prepared a meal and he invited his family members. And all the notable figures in his family on the male side were invited. Abu Lahab and all other people were invited to be part of the meal. Abu Lahab was the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. And when he invited them, he presented the message of Islam to them. And he said to them, I come to you with the message of the truth. And I'm a warner to you, O my people and O my family. At that time, there were mixed reactions because it was a private setting and they called him to the house and people were invited for a meal. So some people did not make much out of it. They heard him out and it was about that. And they left. Then the Prophet of Allah did another big thing. He climbed the mountain of Safa. Safa Marwa is still there till today. Safa Marwa today looks small, but at that time it was big and it was huge. So if you needed to get the attention of the people in Mecca, one would climb the mountain of Safa. So the Prophet of Allah climbed the mountain of Safa, And he said to the people, Ya Ahla Makkah, and he's calling out. And people understood that if somebody is calling them from the peak of a mountain, it is a matter of grave importance, and one needs to stop whatever they are doing and be attentive to the caller. So it is Makkah, it's a few thousand people, not many people, and that's how they communicated in that day and age. When the Prophet of Allah gave the call, everybody gathered. And he called out by specific tribes, Ya Abd Manaf, Ya Banu Hashim, and Ya Bani Makhzoom, Ya Bani Adi. And he called out to all the various sub-tribes of the Quraysh, O the children of Adi, O the children of Banu Makhzoom, O the children of the Quraysh, the children of all the different sub-tribes. And he gathered them all. And before he could speak to them, he asked them, tell me something. What is my position amongst you? And they all said, you are an honorable person amongst us. We have known you for a very long period. You are honest, you are upright, you have integrity. We know you to be an honorable person. So that's the first thing. Then he asked them, tell me, O my people, if I were to tell you that there is an army behind me, behind this mountain, ready to attack you, would you believe me? They said, without a doubt, we'll believe you, because you are honest, you are upright, you have integrity. So, the Prophet ﷺ then came to the third point. He said, know and understand, I am a warner unto you. Allah has sent me with the final message. I am the Prophet of Allah, and I am warning you of the day of Qiyamah. And O children of so and so, and he singled out all the children again and all the tribes, that I am warning you of the final day. Prepare for the final hour before it arrives. And he said to his daughter, O Fatima bint Muhammad, O Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, I will not be able to avail you and help you on the day of Qiyamah. Yes, in this world, you can ask me for whatever you want, and I can give you. But in the year after, I will not be able to help you. Prepare for your final abode. This is the first address. It's a public address, and it's open to everyone. And he's giving a powerful message atop the mountain, and he's giving this call to the people of Makkah. Abu Lahab at that time, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, took some sand and threw it in the direction of the Prophet ﷺ to denote his frustration and to show his disdain for the message of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, Tabban laka, alihada jama'atana, that woe be to you. Is this why you gathered us all? Is this why you are wasting our time? Is this why you made us leave whatever we are doing to gather us here, to tell us a message of the heavens and the message of the final day and the message of Nubuwah? Tabban laka, woe be unto you. And he showed his disgust, he showed his disapproval, he made his disdain known, and he left the gathering. And obviously this was not good, it did not come across well. So the Prophet of Allah ﷺ was said, and Allah had sent down revelation to console and to comfort the Prophet ﷺ. And which surah was revealed? It is the surah you and I read in Salah. Tabbat yada abi lahab. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد. These verses came down censoring Abu Lahab to say that you say tabban to Muhammad. You said tabban laka, ya Muhammad. Well, guess what, Abu Lahab? Tabbat yada abi lahab. You said tabban to Muhammad, well, tabbat yada Abi Lahab. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was consoled in this manner, and the revelation came down, and this is the first public appearance, the first public address, the first public call that the Prophet of Allah made to the people of Mecca. Now, from this point onwards, things are just going to spiral out of control, and things are going to become difficult for the Prophet ﷺ, because until the Prophet of Allah was practicing Islam quietly and secretively, there wasn't much rebellion from the side of the Quraysh. There wasn't much antagonism, because at this point you are not interfering with the setup of Mecca. But now with your public call, things have changed. The dynamics have changed. You are now directly challenging the Quraysh and their system. So things are going to change for the Prophet of Allah, and we'll discuss this after this break. Welcome back to the program, and we are discussing the life of the Prophet ﷺ. In our first segment, we said that the Prophet of Allah for the first time went public with the call of Islam. فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرُ and وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, the verses of the Noble Quran encouraging the Prophet of Allah to go public with his mission. And once he goes public, things start to change for the Prophet of Allah, and things become difficult. Things become difficult because now you are in direct confrontation with the Quraysh and their system. And the Quraysh felt threatened. Let me create the context before we get into any specifics here. You see, the Quraysh enjoyed superiority in Mecca. They were known as the custodians of the Kaaba. They controlled the trade in Mecca. At a time of Hajj, they made handsome profit because people came from far and wide to perform the pilgrimage. And the trade and the economy was controlled by who? The Quraysh. Now, with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam proclaiming the da'wah and going public with his call, this posed as a challenge and as a threat to the Quraysh that if we don't stop this mission, we could be unseated here. We could lose control over Mecca. We could lose control over we could lose grip over the economy. We can lose our own position in society. So there was a lot at stake for the Quraysh. Understand that the Quraysh were not just interested in religion. Religion was, by the way, was secondary for them. The Quraysh were more worried about their standing in society and their financial stability, the economy, their grip over Mecca, and the custody of the Kaaba and all of that. We got a lot to lose here. So how do you now make yourself relevant? Well, you use religion. Religion becomes the driving vehicle for you to become relevant. And so the Quraysh used the religion card to become relevant in Mecca again. So they trumped up this message that, Muhammad is a big threat to our community. He is speaking bad of our deities, the idols, number one. Number two, he is making us go away from the ways of our forefathers. I mean, for hundreds of years, our forefathers worshipped the idols in the Kaaba and around the Kaaba. This man is coming and telling us suddenly that what you're doing is wrong. So they used the religion card and they psyched up the community and they created propaganda. And they went out against the Prophet ﷺ. Now they were no longer passengers. They were no longer backbenchers. They were no longer just sitting and watching from outside. They were no longer bystanders. And they were no longer onlookers. They are now actively taking this mission on, and they want to address this to the root of it. And with this preamble in mind, they had made many attempts to dethrone the Prophet ﷺ and his mission, to derail his mission. And what are the tactics that they adopted? Number one, they came to his uncle Abu Talib. Now, I want to explain to you how the tribal system worked. In Mecca, there were many tribes. You have the Quraysh, you have the Banu Makhzum, Banu Adi, the Banu Umayyah, and the different tribes that were in Mecca. Every tribe had a leader, and everybody rallied behind the leader. The decision of the leader was final. So the leader of the Banu Hashim was Abdul Muttalib. And after Abdul Muttalib came his son, Abu Talib. And Abu Talib was the leader of the Banu Hashim. And so the people of Mecca, following tribal culture and tribal practices, they came to the leader of the tribe, that was Abu Talib. And Abu Talib was the strongest supporter of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of security and backing, right from the beginning. So they came to Abu Talib, who was a non-believer. The Prophet of Allah is a Muslim. His uncle is Abu Talib, that is a disbeliever, non-Muslim. Yet, as the leader of his tribe and as the head of the household, he sheltered and protected the Prophet ﷺ from everybody else. And it was customary in the Arab culture that if the leader gave protection to anyone, then nobody could mess with that tribe. That means the entire tribe would rally behind that one individual. So in simple terms, if Abu Talib announced to the people of Mecca that I am providing security and backing for my nephew Muhammad, nobody could touch him. Because that went against tribal laws and tribal practices to compromise on those laws, to go and attack the Prophet ﷺ. So Abu Talib shielded the Prophet of Allah, and he was a very, very strong support for the Prophet of Allah for a great part of his mission in Mecca. You must remember, Abu Talib just died just before going to Medina. So he was there for the bulk of the mission of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca. Abu Talib was a great support for the Prophet ﷺ. So they came to Abu Talib and they said to him, tell your nephew that he must stop speaking bad about our idols, and he must desist from making disparaging remarks about our culture and our practices and our religion, or else there will be consequences. So Abu Talib said he heard them out. He went to the Prophet of Allah and he said to the Prophet of Allah, oh my nephew, your cousins have come, because everybody is connected in Mecca. All the sub-tribes are connected, going upwards. So they are all relatives. Abu Talib says to the Prophet of Allah that, oh my nephew, your cousins are complaining. And they are saying that you are saying X, Y, and Z. You are disparaging their efforts. You are speaking bad of the deities. And you are speaking about only worshipping one Allah and so forth and so forth. And the Prophet of Allah heard him out. And he said, Wallahi, my uncle, the famous narration which you've heard, that if they were to put the sun in my hand on the one side and the moon on my other hand on the other side, and if they were to ask me to abandon this mission, then too I would not give up on this mission of my uncle. And the other example that is given, just as a person who is unable to bring a light to the sun and have it kindled and ignited, In the same way, I'm unable to give off this mission and abandon this mission. When Abu Talib saw how serious the Prophet of Allah was, and he understood that he is not going to abandon his mission, Abu Talib said, "Go, my nephew, spread your message. I will provide you full protection. Nobody will harm you. You are at liberty to do as you please." And this becomes a turning point in the message of the Prophet ﷺ, in the sense that he now practiced Islam openly. He invited people openly, and nobody could harm him. Nobody could, persecute him, because he had the backing of his uncle Abu Talib, who was the leader of his tribe, the Banu Hashim. And everybody in the tribe had to toe the line of Abu Talib, because he's the leader. Even though they are not Muslims, many of them are still not Muslims, but because the Prophet of Allah belonged to their tribe, tribal laws, tribal culture, we all rally behind our family. We do not abandon our own, and we will provide protection and shelter. And so the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes on to preach the message of Islam. And it's a pity that time has run out, but in our next episode we'll go into detail how the Quraysh back and forth, negotiating with Abu Talib with different proposals, different propositions to get Abu Talib to back off, to hand the Prophet of Allah. But eventually they realized that Abu Talib is not going to back down, and they will continue to support him, and the Prophet of Allah continues with his mission. We will continue in the next program.